While there are some people who may be concerned about the origins of Halloween and its focus on blood, death, horror, and the occult, to millions of youngsters across the nation, it has been adopted as a time to pursue scary fun. It is an opportunity to dress up in ghoulish or fanciful costumes, to engage in the fantasy of being a witch or a vampire, ghost, or devil. Eager trick-or-treaters solicit candy door to door or bob for apples at Halloween parties. Others brave haunted houses and horror movie marathons, while the more daring visit cemeteries at midnight, play with Ouija boards, and hold seances in an effort to contact spirits of the dead. Hollywood is continuing to capitalize on society's growing craving for the occult and demonic. The irony is that while these producers label such films as fun and make-believe, many of them hire practicing witches or Satanists as technical advisors who ensure the authentic reproductions and performances of rituals, sacrifices, spells, and curses.
People are so hyper during the day, they need to come home and watch something that's totally unreal so they can release themselves from all the pressures. It's just the type of thing that makes you laugh and forget about life.
Over the last 2 decades, most horror films have become far more graphic in their depictions of violence and cruelty. Movies affectionately known as splatter films routinely detail torture and dismembering of bodies, drinking of blood, cannibalism, rape, and a host of other grotesque atrocities.
And passing those cups around to different people who were partaking of her blood. Then the high priest, he took the athami, or the ritual knife, and he picked it up and he put my hand on it, and then he forced it into her chest. So when I think back on Halloween, you know, over that period of time that happened, you know, that was the climax event, Halloween night, where they killed that innocent little girl. And this is something that's happening every Halloween. That's not just an isolated event. I mean, there are children all over the world who are losing their lives during Halloween night, and yet we, as a society, we go out and celebrate it, and we go door to door and we ask for candy, and it's a big celebration to us. And I think it's quite ironic how one group of people are thinking it's fun and another group of people are taking human life, and yet they don't, you know, there seems to be this wall and nobody wants to face the facts of what's really going on.
Sharing the Druidic tradition of nature worship is witchcraft. The title witch is from the Saxon word Wicca, meaning the one who practices sorcery. The Oxford Dictionary states that a Wiccan is one who is twisted, bent, or warped. Despite attempts from modern Wiccans to sanitize the original intention of witchcraft, its practice cannot be divorced from demonology.
O guardians of the watchtower of the east, I, Ishtar, high priestess and witch, do so mote it be.
So mote it be.
My mother was a witch, and my grandmother was a witch, and I have been a witch for as long as I can remember. Since I have been practicing the craft, there has been a great revival.
I believe there's about 1 million people in England alone that practice witchcraft. The pagans are all over the place with their covens. If they're not calling themselves witches alone, they are paganistic in their ways.
There are probably now as many people practicing witchcraft in Britain as there are committed Christians.
I regard myself as a natural witch. I was regarded myself as a witch since early childhood. I was brought up in a very isolated part of the country, on the Welsh border, which has a long tradition of magic and Welsh sorcerers. It's almost as if there's a kind of grassroots feeling back towards paganism. We live in a kind of post-Christian era almost, and that people are moving towards a kind of neo-paganism, I suppose.
We learn as practicing witches to tap into forces of nature and to actually, if you like, send out a spell or an incantation.
To bring oneself back to nature and to learn how we fit in with the natural scheme of the universe and the natural scheme of the earth, and understanding what we need to do to heal the planet.
Because worship of nature is so central to their theology, large numbers of practicing Druids and witches are dedicated to today's ecology movement.
A campaign for individual ecological responsibility, which is concerned with showing how each of us can become ecologically responsible.
I think the time is coming now where we have to take the responsibility by the throat and actually get out there and say, there are answers here. I'm not prepared as a pagan, as a priest, and as a practicing witch to sit back and see my planet, my mother, raped any longer.
Goats, oh, answer unto me.
Halloween is often confused as a Christian holiday because of its association with Christian All Saints' Day or the Eve of St. Hallows, All Souls' Day. In fact, the original Christian dedication used to be celebrated in May and was intended to honour those Christians who died for their faith. But by the 9th century, the influential Roman Catholic Church changed the holiday to November, and the Protestant Church soon followed. Today, a thin Christian veil attempts to disguise an ancient pagan festival of the dead, which has become not only a secular observance, but notorious as the most favoured holy day of witches, sorcerers and devil worshippers.
I can't really say when I became interested in Wicca, because it's always been part of me, part of my roots. I love Halloween. I think I'm a very autumn person. We dress up the house with cobwebs and so on, and we cast a circle, and we have a smoky cauldron, and we all scry, which means do clairvoyance, into the smoke which comes out of the cauldron, and we open the gates of the underworld, and if any spirits want to come forward and speak, we listen to them.
My first initiation, when I became first degree, was on Halloween, and I felt very, very much in tune with the god.
The ancient Druids worshipped Baal, one of the most powerful of all the demon kings. In the list of Enochian demons, Baal is said to be a king which is of the power of the East. Eastern religions emphasize that spiritual power comes from meditation. The common denominator between Druids, witches and Satanists is the practice of meditation for the purpose of making contact with the spirits of the dead or disembodied souls.
You do a lot of meditation with the arts, and you get onto this higher plane. It becomes less physical and more mental.
It takes years of painstaking study, meditational work, finding your higher mind, being able to actually tap into the forces of nature and use those.
I have, on occasion, touched upon, I suppose you could call them spirit guides. People describe them in different way. I am aware of a hierarchy of spiritual advisors who live on another plane of consciousness that you can approach, that will acknowledge you and advise you and assist you.
We have what we call contacts. There are other names for them. They are beings, that's the easy thing to call them, which can be people who have lived on the earth, or they can be god forms.
They become almost as real as the people standing next to you. And whoever else you call doesn't actually materialize. You can't see them in the physical sense, but mentally you know that they are there. You can see them in your mind's eye.
They represent really forces in the universe. Forces that are like gravity or wind, but they're forces that have to do with our internal makeup and make our minds work in the way that they work.
Margaret Adler, practicing witch and author of Drawing Down the Moon, warns that the trance state, with its roots in ancient shamanism and paganism, is not to be entered into lightly or when alone. For the spirit to be contacted actually enters the witch's body, using it to deliver a verbal message.
The forces that could come into the room could take over in a form of possession. We had one example here where one young woman, a nurse, was possessed by, I don't know what it was, but a horrible voice came through her and she passed out.
While occult procedures in their rituals may vary in intensity, the fact is that witches, as well as Satanists, commemorate Halloween night with the same fervent dedication to invoke spirits for personal power.
Queen of heaven, Queen of hell,